welcome to Friday's episode of Marchese and Buller. And today we have myself, William Marchese, and Gary Buller.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about mainstream and literature today. So basically the difference between mainstream writing and literature writing. I mean, this week has been pretty much a lot of writing stuff, right?
Oh yeah, plenty. It's hard to kind of think about at the moment in my spare time, writing. I think what kind of spurred this subject on was I purchased a well-known independent author's short story collection. I'd heard a lot about this person. They'd been nominated for quite prestigious awards, and I thought I'd give their book a try. So I bought it on Kindle, and I read the first story, and man, it was weird. To the point where I was thinking to myself, is this actually horror? Because it wasn't meant to be Bizarro, I don't think. I mean, you know, Bizarro is something completely different. It was a horror story, but it was just so random. And what these sort of, it was quite literary, and I'm well documented in sort of the literary horror, you know, my opinions on it and stuff. Literary horror seems to assume that the reader understands the complex world which is being conveyed within it from the get-go, and that's impossible because you don't know what the world, you know, the story is setting. You don't understand the people. You've just been introduced to the characters. It's a short story, and I guess the reason why these stories are written that way, as if they're making an assumption you know everything, is because they know that it's going to be a mystery to you, and you know this mystery is going to sort of draw you along. Why? That's impossible. Why are they doing that? You know.
Yeah.
I think that's what sort of is supposed to draw you on, but what sort of confused me a little bit is this story that I was reading was originally published in a professional magazine, you know, quite a famous horror magazine. I just thought to myself, the number of times I've submitted stories to this place, and I've submitted nothing like this story. You know what I mean? Throwing quality out of the window, and you know your writing ability and stuff. My stories are completely different to this sort of story. You know, I didn't think I'd get away with writing this weird and get accepted. Am I making sense? I feel like I'm not making sense.
So the way I feel is, you know, I feel both ways. Both ways are good and bad. You know, You got the mainstream aspect of it, which is the easiest example I can give is Stephen King, where he compares himself to Big Mac and fries. Right? He's actually said that. Some people say that's not good that he said that because he's like, you know, lowering his quality, how he feels about himself. But from what I've also heard, he has put out a literary kind of story, and they say it was very beautiful, and it proves that he can do that. The question is, what sells? That's what I think the most important is. If you want to get into the eyes of many people, you're going to do mainstream. It's easier. It's like getting a movie, but in literary form. And if it's good too, because people are going to read, because it reads like a movie. It's easier to digest. Plus you're getting the benefits of actually reading. It's good cognitive wise for your brain and everything. But literary work, a lot of people say it's like going to a cafe and, you know, snapping and everybody instead of clapping. And then you get into these places where they're like, oh, you get this prestigious award from, they call them these very stuffy people that are just like, you know, you're going to get this reward because you're so great. I also think that literary work is on the level of, it's sort of similar to having an abstract art piece on a wall where it's open for interpretation. So it's like you're trying to pay attention and you're trying to follow this, but you really shouldn't, because it's going to be an overall picture of what you're going to get from that person's story, and then me and you can discuss it and we can go back and forth. But it's more brain work, whereas the mainstream is easier to digest. You got some writers that can do both, like Dean Koontz, Anne Rice. They blend it a little bit, and they've come out on top, you know, if they can do it, I guess, well enough.
I think the problem is a couple of, like, I'm a short story writer, you know. And I think the problem is most of the magazines out there in the market are literary magazines, you know, mainstream. I can't think of many magazines that actually accept mainstream horror that aren't like token rate, you know. I mean, in terms of like writing novels and stuff, maybe that's different. But in terms of the short story, I think, yeah, most of the magazines off the top of my head accept this literary brand of horror, and that includes places like Cemetery Dance and The Dark and Nightmare and, Three-Lobed Burning Eye. And, these are all, just off the top of my head, these are well-known, well-established horror magazines, and they all take literary horror. That said, Joe Hill can come along, or Stephen King could come along with, a 15-word story on the back of a cigarette packet, and they would buy it because it's a Stephen King or a Joe Hill story. And it sells. But yeah, most of the markets I come across are literary. It's like that thing, do you attempt to ape that style? Is that the style to be? Is literary an evolution of what I am, or is it something that other people write? And do I somehow try and find myself to that level in order to find myself in these magazines?
Yeah. Well, a good example is like the Josh Malaman book I just finished, the Birdcage.
Yeah.
Now, the book and the movie are totally different. I'm not going to spoil anything in this episode, but there's a scene with, I'm just going to say with the birds. Obviously, it's called the Bird Box, so there should be a scene with birds. And there's a scene that's very iconic in the book, and it can be interpreted in many different ways. And it actually has, I can see it as having different meanings, right? Whereas in the movie, it was just a scene where it just happened. It was different, but it just happened, sort of like action. But in the book, even though you're still in that action and it's still mainstream, right? I still got a little bit of it could be literary in that sense. So if you can mix the two, and you can, even getting into The Dark or Cemetery Dance, if it's literary that they want, if you go and you make it mainstream mixed with literary and you do it well, you could be a star pretty much, because you're trailblazing a different path.
Do you think the literary style of writing is an evolution or the next step to what we're doing, or do you just think it's a certain type of author with a certain way of writing?
I just think it's it's a different way of writing. I think we could do it, and like I was saying to you before, you can show your writing chops by doing it. It's just like a guitarist. You can play a lot of, melodic music, or you can just go, you can just do like, heavy metal, or you can do different types of music. You have to do literary, but maybe dabbling with it here and there to show that you can, or to show your level of experience, it could be a good thing. But I think in the long run, if you want to do this for money, which a lot of people will say, oh, I'm not doing this for money, I'm doing it for myself, you're fooling yourself if you don't think you want to get something out of it. I mean, some people don't. Some people just want to do it for, accolade, everybody's loving this, and that's great. And that's a good thing too. I mean, you can, if that's what you want. But if you really are doing this to quit your day job and, all the things that people say, that they want to do this for, you can still have fun and you can still make it an art form, but you do want to get paid for it. And getting paid for it sometimes means it may not be something you want to write about, or it may, which we've talked about on other episodes, it may be something that this group wants to read about, and you can do it well. Yeah. Maybe you like this, though, but this person is going to pay you, or this group is going to pay you.
Yeah, I think to become a writer who's paid for your troubles and to make serious money in this game, I think you need to be a novel writer. I think you have to write bigger, longer pieces. Short story writers don't make money. Like I think I've said a million times before, I do it as a step to sort of working my way up. But I think the serious money is in novel writing. But I think at the level where I am now, and the game I'm playing at the moment with the writing and submissions, the level I'm at is a lot of literary stuff. And if I want to make any sort of money out of my writing in short stories, I think you kind of shoehorn into sort of going the literary route. It's hard not to.
Yeah.
To be sort of pushed in that kind of direction. I think I can write literary. I'm not sure if I'm particularly fantastic at it. I think the mood has to take me.
It's definitely mood.
Some stories sort of push me in that direction a little bit, I think. But I think it's one of those that I'm kind of hoping to establish myself as a short story writer and a decent short story writer. You get a name, a credit in a reputable magazine, and then you submit to other magazines, and the other magazines see this magazine in your credits. And they go, oh, maybe I'll give this guy a second chance with this story, and then they publish you. And I think it's a bit of a a domino effect. You get in one place, and others are more willing to sort of take you seriously, maybe. Or maybe I'm doing them a disservice,
It's all about being yourself, too, and being an individual. So if you go the literary route, and you can maybe carve some sort of, for lack of a better term, a gimmick that's all yours, you can be known as that person, he does great literary, but he does it like this. Like, then you can make your own name, make a name for yourself.
Yeah. Maybe it's just ignorance on my part, and I'm open to that view. Any of the listeners or viewers want to sort of say I'm just being ignorant, please tell me in the notes. But some of these literary stories are either far above my head, or they're just too weird and abstract to actually be scary. Yeah. And I think it kind of defeats the objective. Have you ever seen a movie called Mother? ! Mother. It was a sort of semi-horror film which was out a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
It was really abstract and really weird, and I was watching it, and some people were saying, "Oh, this is brilliant! It's fantastic! Wonderful film," and I just couldn't get it. I don't like to I like a film that sort of tests your intelligence a bit, but I don't like to have to sit there and think, what the hell's going on here? Stories, we talked about the Bird Box, the stories with birds are really popular in literary horror as well. You get lots of, I've read a few really bizarre stories with birds involved. What's this thing about birds? The scariest I've ever seen birds was The Birds by Alfred Hitchcock. They don't seem to have a beginning, a middle, of an end. It's the structure's all out. It's like,
there was a part in the Bird Box that I thought it was going to actually turn into the birds.
Right.
That's where it's totally different from the movie. So that's why I was just like, this is much. I would suggest definitely reading the book, because even with spoilers, I mean, it's a great read. It's great, and he has a very simplistic way of writing, and I like that. It's simplistic, but it's complex as you build. And that's the best way to do it. That's mainstream, basically. The other way, literary, is more, big words and stuff like that. Some people may not understand these words. You put all these words here, and they're going to say, "What the hell is that?" I don't know. I don't understand this. So I would say maybe even a mix. Just mix it up.
I have, to be fair, I have read literary stories that use very, very simple language. The one that I was talking about that I read yesterday, that was very simple language. There's not a big word in it, really.
Yeah.
But the ideas were quite abstract and weird. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there was one or two words that were a bit, or I've not used that one for a while.
Yeah.
The ideas were very, very, very strange and abstract, and I just didn't find it scary at all. And I was a little bit worried because, like I said at the beginning of the show, I was thinking to myself, do I have to write stories like this to get into these places? Because I don't think this is scary.
Yeah.
I think the whole point of horror is to make you uneasy and to frighten. Yeah. I mean, funny enough, one mainstreamish horror magazine that we're doing quite well at the moment is Unnerving. I'll say Unnerving do generally publish mainstream horror.
It's got a literary flair to it, though.
Yes, yeah.
I think all short stories. The thing is, when you write a short story, it almost always has to be literary because it's very short, and you can't get that background that you get from a novel. You can't slowly build, so you have to kind of cram everything into this short little area. And if you don't get kind of literary with it or fancy, there's no way of painting that picture vastly enough.
It's an economy of words. Yeah, you've got to be very. You haven't got time to, build it up, have you? Really, you've just got to, in 3,000 or 4,000 words, which seems to be around about the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Unless you're Stephen King, in which case you can write up to 10,000 word short stories. The shorter one. You've got to be economical with the idea. You've got to, put them right in the action, and you've got to. Cull those words.
So if you like this episode, please subscribe.
I think even if you have an opinion on what we're saying,
do
you think we're talking rubbish? Let us know. Do you think we're missing the mark? Do you think we're missing the point? Do you think it's just us lacking a little bit of intellect with this sort of thing? Do you need to be a bit more intelligent to get some of the more strong-standing literary horror stories? It'd be quite interesting to hear if people just think it's an intellect thing.
Ugh.
It's all with Mark Casey and more. It's all with Mark Casey and more.
You don't even have to comment, you don't have to like it, just subscribe and maybe hit the bell, because I think I've heard that there's doing some new thing now where the algorithm doesn't do anything unless you get a bell. If you don't want to,
okay.
then maybe you don't want to get the notifications on your phone. Oh, look, these two guys again,
Yeah.
But just notice, at least subscribe. Submit.
Submit to Will.
Submit.
Get on your knees and submit to Will.
Let's not go that far. Let's not go that far.
Do you think that we're completely off the mark, or do you agree with us? If you agree with us, just let us know. Down there. Down there.
Ugh. Did you say red rum? Red rum. Wait, you sound like a robot. You said down down.
Doth thou want to live deliciously? Yeah, done.
You know what's so funny, man? Every time I'm like thinking about the show, I always say, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do. I always look at the other people that do YouTube shows, and I say, look at them, they look so professional. And then I get up here, and everything goes out of my head. I freeze. I forget what I want to say.
Yeah, me too.
It sucks,
Yeah.
man.
It's funny. I can't remember what the next one's about. Oh, is it about weird horror stories and stuff?
Mainstream and literature. Okay, let's start it up.